So our goal tonight was to get together a bunch of people who live in Frogtown or who work in Frogtown and just know this neighborhood, and who could talk about informational needs that people who live and work here have to be able to help kids succeed.
This is my community here. Actually, I live right here on Aurora Avenue. I'm also a mother of 7, so I know a little bit about raising kids and some challenges that we may have with our young people. And they range from 16 to 27. So I'm always trying to think of ways that we can continue to do outreach to community so that we can get a better engagement of those that we need here, which is our young people.
I actually run a youth program, and so my concerns would be about emergency youth housing, emergency shelter for young people. What we don't realize is that the homelessness for young people is rising at an alarming rate. We don't have anywhere to place them. We have the safe house. However, you only can call after 7 o'clock to see if there's a bed. And so that leaves our children out here with nowhere to go. Accountability is real important to me. And I just think that all of us need to be accountable for our actions, every entity, every agency. And with the Minnesota Public Radio, when they're not being accountable, we need to put them on notice and let them know, hey, we know what you're doing, we know what just happened, we know what you aren't gonna do, and we need to make them accountable.
My name is Davon Baker. I'm the youth coordinator from Mentoring Young Adults. And as a teenager myself, when I'm being mentored by people, I feel that I'm more spoken at than spoken to, and it really bothers me.
Neighborhood expectations, that people who are moving into the neighborhood are not clear on what the neighborhood expectations are, and the people who are already in the neighborhood have a hard time relaying that message to them, or have some kind of tension or animosity about them even being there. So that's one of the big issues that I've seen not only in this neighborhood but throughout the city. I've gone and talked to the city councilman about why are there always police cars posted in front of the library at Rondo, but they're not on Wright Street, and they're not on the east side where crime is higher than it is actually here, but they're always there. And that is a perception problem, and it gives a perception from the people in the neighborhood and from outside of the neighborhood that this library is not a safe place to come.
It's interesting that you brought up the statistic about youth in the neighborhood, because one of the other demographics that often gets, or demographic categories that often gets thrown out about Frogtown, Capitol Heights, North End neighborhood, and Rondo is that it's also one of the highest concentrations of poverty in the state of Minnesota. And I find it really interesting that there's a connection between this group of very, very young people and this group of very, very economically disadvantaged people.
And I've worked with a lot of kids who have had many, many disadvantages and risk factors. But recently, having become a parent makes that feel different to me now. Other people's kids are somebody's kids. And I think we have a community responsibility to make sure that all of the kids in our community, in our neighborhoods, are having their needs met however we can get together to support that.
When I first moved here, I had some very disheartening experiences with the neighborhood kids. It just struck me that there's a lot of problems here for kids, and that's something that's it's one of the things that has always made Frogtown for me a hard place to live, because it is hard for kids.
I guess tying the youth education to community, but also to the local economy, since there are so many businesses on the avenue, and there's opportunity for engagement in that manner, and really having to be community-based education.
I've grown up in foster care all my life. I was bred in the lower socioeconomic class. I was always the black sheep, the poor guy, but yet I've accepted my challenges, and I've seen things change before my eyes. But I've always had a passion for the direction my kids or my kids' kids are going. And the biggest issue I have is the bridge that separates the lower socioeconomic class to the high class. You know, it seems like it's getting further and further, and it's not that I notice it. It's just the kids notice it.
Now people have been sharing about informational needs that they feel are the most important. Some of them have come up with pretty much every single possible informational need was listed as the most important, and then we'll discuss some of them, and they'll choose one, and all together as a big group, and maybe MPR will work on trying to make that one happen.
There are a lot of programs that exist right now, current youth programs, opportunities, but people aren't aware of them or how to access them, or they cost money.
When I was with the Wilder Foundation, we ran all kinds of summer programs for kids, and we had, I don't know, 20-page little booklet that went out to everybody in the neighborhood with all the different programs.
But there's really no other programming other than football, open gym, some baseball programming. There's,
Yeah, it's
I'm
kind of
kinda
inside, yeah, like you said,
We saw the future.
And it is now.
It is now. It is using technology to build community. We looked at, we actually came up with a pithy name for ours as well. It's either Frog Book or My Frog. We're thinking about building, kind of developing social networks digitally, kind of keeping in mind the way that we were talking about youth and accessing youth, and kind of making an effort to address young people in a language that they're comfortable speaking.
I will, if you give me your contact information, whether you just write it on here or whether you become part of the network, I will send you a summary of some of the things that we discussed and ask you if you want to participate in the next, I guess, the next step of what we might be able to try to do together. And if this is not the direction you want to go and you want to do something else, then, you know, you should say that because it's your neighborhood. We can talk about other things too.